Vanakkam. Now, I am going to talk about another important portion of peer review on standard on quality control, which is applicable for the practice unit. So far, I have discussed in other points, and we will have two very important things about the standard on quality control for practice unit. And normally, practice unit has to have quality control on policies and procedures for the 6 items. That is one is with reference to leadership responsibilities, ethical requirements, acceptance and continuance of client relationship and special engagements, human resources, engagement performance, and monitoring. In this session, we are going to discuss about the engagement performance and monitoring in detail. This is questionnaire that has been given by peer review board to be submitted by the practicing unit to the peer reviewer as well as to the board. So we are going to discuss the highlight of engagement performance and monitoring. And practice unit has to share its planning process manual. So that means practice unit should have got the planning process manual. And practice unit has to ensure that the planning process undertaken for engagements meet the professional, regulatory, and legal requirements. This is a very, very important thing. So it is a compulsory that the practicing unit must have planning process manual, which should satisfy the professional, regulatory, and legal requirements of the country or for the client. And there should be a pre-assignment meeting. So before accepting any work, the practice unit should have got the pre-assignment meeting with the client's liaison officers in order to understand the preparedness for the client. So that means there should be a prescribed format available, or it is available at the practicing unit about the pre-assignment meeting with the clients. What are the things that they have to discuss before accepting or before preparing the work for the client? And this helps the practice unit to start the professional functions. So this is a very, very important thing. So there is another thing there that the peer review board they suggested, format of pre-assignment meeting with clients, liaison officers, etc. And the practice units engagements are performed, supervised, documented, reported, and communicated in accordance with professional standards, applicable regulators, and those of the practicing units. So that means all the engagements are of the practicing unit should be properly documented, should be properly supervised, should be properly reported, and should be properly communicated. So this helps the practicing unit to decide on the matters of doing the audit for the client. So practicing unit has to submit the checklist for this support to the peer reviewer. So here also they say that you have to have a checklist for this point, that is about the performance, supervision, documentation, reporting, and communication. There should be a specific list. This is also another additional information that the practicing unit should have, they have to prepare the checklist. And next thing is the practice unit has to ensure that the qualified team members review the work performed by other team members on a timely basis. That is review of if you have the qualified team members, there is the qualified team members are here and other team members are there, and these qualified team members, they have to review the work done by the other team members on a timely basis, either on the weekly basis or monthly basis. And for that, practice unit has to maintain documentation for the supervision of work performed. So here also another thing they've said that you have to, that is practicing unit has to maintain a document for supervision. So document maintenance is very, very important in the quality performance. Next point that you have to see is practice unit has to produce the document maintained for the supervision or performed by the senior members and partners. So that is the supervision by the qualified team by the team members. Here, what is the work done by the senior members and partners, how their work have been supervised. For that, what are the documents maintained by the practicing unit? Then the practicing unit, they have to give the list. Then communication of the review points has to be shared with the team to ensure the performance of professional work. So communication, that is what are the performance of the professional work has to be communicated with the team members. So that is another important point that you have to see with this. Then maintenance of working papers. Working paper maintenance is very, very important. For each and every audit, then the maintenance of working paper plays a very vital role. Even in future, if something goes wrong, then working paper speaks. So this is required for the all professional functions, whether the practicing unit has maintaining the working papers properly or not, and these working papers can be maintained in electronic form or in physical form, that is maybe in the form of hard copy. Then if the in case the working papers are stored in electronic form, and the practice unit has to say where the same has been stored. That is also another important thing. Next one is to maintain or to have the proper storage space, there should be a service agreement. So that service agreement has to be verified by the peer reviewer. So these details also have to be given by the practicing unit to the peer reviewer. That is service level agreement with the service provider. It must be shared by the practicing unit to the peer reviewer. And practice unit has to explain the methods of maintaining confidentiality. So normally the practicing unit has to maintain the confidentiality of the client. And what are the methods based on which they are maintaining the confidentiality, and they have to preserve, so safe custody of the information and integrity, because the practice unit should not misuse it. So what about the integrity of that records? Then accessibility. So how you have to go and reach the information of the client, and retrievability. Suppose in case anything is lost, then you have to retrieve the data. So all this have to be properly explained by the practicing unit to the peer reviewer. So this is a very, very important thing, that is maintaining confidentiality, then keeping everything in the safe custody, and have the integrity, and to reach the easy reach of the data, and if anything goes wrong, how to retrieve it. So that is very, very important thing. Then practice unit has to ensure that retainment of engagement documentation for a period of time sufficient to meet the needs of the firm, professional standards, laws, and regulations. This is very, very, very important thing. For how much time the documents have to be, whether to keep it for 7 years or 8 years, 10 years. So the retainment of engagement documentation has to be clearly informed to the peer reviewer, so that for how many years the records are available. So that is also another important thing that the practice unit has to inform the peer reviewer. Then policies and procedures adopted by the practice unit with reference to consultation in case of difficult and contentious matters. So that is very, very simple. That's normally you will have some difficult situation. What are the procedures? What are the policies of the practicing unit to handle the difficult situations? Everything has to be documented. Everything has to be properly maintained. So for that, they have to appoint a team so that that difficult situation has to be overcome. So practice unit has to produce inter-team discussion documentation for such difficult matters. So how they have taken the decision, that is very, very important. And normally the difficult matters are sometimes during the audit, you will find difficult matters are related to tax matters, some advisory related matters. So most of the clients, they want the chartered accountant advice or practicing unit advice, how they've given that. So to handle the difficult situation, what are the policies and procedures adopted by the practicing unit have to be clearly spelled out in the question. So the practicing unit technique of solving difference of opinion. So that's a difficult situation here. There may be some difference of opinion within the engagement team, or with the client also, or with those who are consulted, or between the engagement quarter and quality control. So how these difference of opinion have been solved? What are the techniques that practicing unit has got? So when you go and look into the quality performance, one can see that all the situations have been given importance. Then after that, you have come to a conclusion. That is called as conclusion statement. Conclusion statement. That conclusion statement should be properly documented and implemented. So difference of opinions have to be solved, and that what is the conclusion that they have come, and that should be properly documented, and that has to be implemented. And about this discussion, observation, there should be observation sheet which has to be prepared by practicing unit, and this observation has to be discussed by the practicing unit with the management of the client. And in case if the matters are not solved, if the matters are not resolved, then the final report should not be given. So only after finalizing the difference of opinion, only after coming out the difficult situations, the final report will be issued. So this is also another important thing that a practicing unit has to follow. Then practicing unit's criteria to determine an engagement of quality control review with the given engagement. How they are determining the engagement of quality control. That is also very, very important. And reports of engagement where quality assurance review is required should not be released before completion of the review. So that means that is the quality control, and there is a team to review the quality control. Only after the completion of the review, then only the quality, after the completion of the review, reports of engagement. So what is the report? Everything will be released. So before completion of the review, no report will be issued. So in this, the practicing unit has to clearly spell out that in this manner, we are taking decision. We are releasing the report only after solving everything. So practice unit has to address the procedures of the nature, timing, extent, documentation of engagement quality assurances. It is same thing repeated. So how to document, how to carry out the nature of the work, everything should be properly mentioned, and it has to be addressed by the practicing unit in its question, which is related to standard on quality control. Now, another thing is, what are the practicing units establishment criteria with reference to engagement quality assurance reviewers? So they are fixing some eligibility category. So it is an indirect way. The peer review board said that practice unit has to fix a criteria for the eligibility of engagement quality assurance reviewers. So they themselves, they can review it. And practicing unit has to ensure that the member doing engagement quality assurance reviewers possess the required technical qualification experience. So what is the eligibility to carry out the engagement quality assurance reviewers? What is the criteria that has to be fixed by the practicing unit, and what is the required technical qualification experience have to be clearly spelled out by the practicing unit to carry out the engagement of quality assurance reviewers. So this is a very, very important thing that you have to see. This is what we have discussed so far with reference to engagement performance on standard on quality control performance. Next one is monitoring. That means we are making the supervision or monitoring. So here, practice unit has to ensure that the policies and procedures are relevant to current trends. So that means it is indirectly, they say that the policies and procedures of practice unit have to be updated with the current trends. So what are the way in which they are updating the current trends? That also has to be given to the peer reviewers. How does a practicing unit perform monitoring procedures in the light of adherence to the professional standards, regulatory and legal requirements, appropriate designing and implementation of quality controls? So this is also very, very important. That is monitoring procedures, how they monitor the work, how they monitor the procedures in order to perform quality professional standards and to meet the regulatory and legal requirements. What are the methods they are following? Everything has to be clearly spelled out by the practicing unit, so that if they clearly spelled out everything, then there's a quality available at the practicing unit. Then method of communication, frequency of communication by practicing unit when the deficiencies are noticed, and recommendation for remedial action to the concerned engagement personnel to other personnel. It is very, very simple. There is a deficiency. For that deficiency, they are having some meeting, and to have the discussion in the meeting, the method of communication has to be prepared by practicing unit, and the same has to be conveyed to the engagement personnel or other form of personnel. And how many times, what is the frequency of communication, that also be clearly spelled out by the practicing unit. And dealing technique of practice unit with reference to issuance of compliance allegations. Suppose in each and every case, almost complaints will be there against the practice unit. How they've solved this? What are the techniques they adopted to solve the complaints and allegations? That also you have to see. As a practice unit, they have to submit this reply to the peer reviewer in this questionnaire. Then next one is list of documents prepared by practicing unit in evidence of monitoring operation for of each element of its quality control system. So all the documents have to be submitted, have to be prepared and submitted by the practicing unit to the peer reviewer. And the period of retaining monetary documentation by the practicing unit. For how many period, for how much period that they are retaining the documents, that is also to be clearly spelled out. So now this is only one line, but when you say that, sir, we are preserving this staff records for some 8 years, 10 years, and all the expenses list, we are having this much of period, everything that you are to give. Next one is whether practicing unit is subject to peer review in the past. So that means a peer review it is not only one time effort. Once in 3 years, they have to do it. They are because it depends on the scale of firm. The peer review has to be conducted. Whether this practicing unit has got the peer review assignment in the earlier or past period, and if yes, then the attachment certificate. In the attachment certificate, they will say that, so this is the disqualification, this is a suggestion we have given, everything will be there in that certificate. So this has to be submitted to the peer reviewer by the practicing unit. So with this, I am just closing the points on we discussed all the 6 points of standard on quality control. So with this, I wish you all the best, and thank you very much once again. And thank you very much for the patient hearing, and Nandri, Vanakkam.